It's time now to look at the weekend newspapers, and to help me make sense of the headlines, I'm joined by the head of programming at CNBC Africa, Chris Bishop, and citizen journalist Makhosandile Zulu. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. Let me start with you, Chris. The City Press has a very provocative but very prescient headline. It basically says, will Cyril blink on the wage bill? We've just heard the Deputy Minister saying they don't want to strike, but they are essentially ready to face down workers if that strike comes.
Well, it's the big question. I mean, they said in the budget they were going to deal with this whole thing with the civil service wage bill in the medium term. I don't know what that means. Some people say a year and a half, some people say 2 years. Already in the Mail and Guardian, they're reporting the unions are threatening to collapse the civil service, which is something they could do and would be like a hole in the head for the economy at the moment, bearing in mind where we are. I don't know. I think he's got to chop the money off the thing. It's going to be very painful, and yes. I think it's going to get him a lot more enemies, I think, than he's got already.
Mr. Zulu, let me turn to you. Do you think that the President has the kind of numerical and political strength required in the ANC itself and in the alliance to be able to throw down the gauntlet to trade unions and say, you've got to bite this bullet?
I think it's going to be very difficult for the President. Like I was saying backstage, that I don't think he has the power to speak alone and say, I'm taking this decision. So he has to also listen to his alliance partners, which include COSATU. And like we said, if protest comes for our public right now, it's going to be a bad situation for the President. And we're going to elections next year, local government elections. So that, again, the ANC needs support. And if that happens, how much support?
This is the thing that intrigues me. I mean, I want to stay on the point that you're making about municipal elections coming up, because it's not just public sector wages that have been cut. Tranches to municipalities have also been cut. Tranches to infrastructure, including transport, has been cut. This is a very risky strategy for an African National Congress that in the last municipal election lost 3 major metros. Do you think that the ANC believes that if they throw a lifeline to the black middle class, that they will actually regain their position at the polls?
I don't think they might regain a position. Instead, I think you might see more people like your former Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba come up as independent candidates,
yes,
and they might gain more support. And on the other side, I think the EFF also could gain more support in the local government elections, looking at how they play their politics and how they've managed to gain a lot of ground in Pretoria and in Johannesburg using their chip or their card. So I think next year you might see a growth for other parties instead of the ANC.
Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult. But again, a lot of people in the business world are saying whatever Cyril has to do, he must do it. If he goes down in flames, he goes down in flames. But the need for action now. And also, we've got to get this fiscal thing right. I mean, the thing that caught my eye in the Business Times, this thing on tax dodgers.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't realise that it was only like 56 to 58% compliance with tax in this country.
But I mean, are you really surprised considering the way in which SARS was particularly targeted during state capture years? I mean,
sure.
You had a multinational like Bain sitting with former President Jacob Zuma long before Tom Moyane was even appointed at SARS, planning to disable the business unit and, of course, the skills that were there to actually get tax compliance. We have a trust deficit around tax morality, don't we?
Well, yeah, well, put it into a bit of context. I was at a conference this week for CNBC Africa talking to the Zambian delegation, and I was lamenting the fact in this country 40% top rate tax, 5 million taxpayers. And they said, well, yeah, we pay 40%, you're lucky, you've only got 600,000 taxpayers in Zambia for the whole nation. But I mean, I think that really, honestly, this tax thing as well, I think the implications are deep. You can already see some of the services, some of the infrastructure that's been unfortunately being run down by the take. And was it only a decade ago, every year SARS would celebrate the fact that we took more money than was targeted in the tax take every year.
Mr. Zulu, you look at state capture. I mean, that is your area of speciality. The inability of SARS to collect revenue. I mean, the SARS Commissioner, Professor Edward Kieswetter, was saying, let us get our systems right, even though, you know, we are okay with people not paying tax. You could see he was kind of sidestepping the issue of whether he would have liked higher taxes, but he wants the space to be able to get the institution right so that they can actually widen that net. Do you think he has what it takes to get the public purse, you know, to be able to collect tax, to get South Africans to actually comply, and more importantly, businesses to comply?
I think he certainly does, but I think what's more important right now, like you mentioned, state capture, we need to start taking action on people that are implicated so that we can start getting the money back. Like the minister was saying, that certain people have, but we need to get that money back from previous people. And then, like the State Capture Commission that is happening right now, I also think that we need a preliminary report before it ends.
That is such an important thing that you're saying, because if one looks at the Nugent Commission, that's exactly what the Nugent Commission did. It didn't wait until the commission finished because it dealt with certain aspects. So if you're saying that we need an interim report to finalize certain things so that there can be action, what would that be? What would the interim report consist of? What have we heard enough of, and what has been tested at the Zondo Commission to be able to give us such an interim report?
Well, I think there's a lot of that has been, especially the Estina report. If you look at what there was, Busisiwe, the public protector, has done a report, even though there was a finding against it. But the testimony that has come before the Zondo Commission as well, I think that is enough to start prosecuting on that or taking action on that. So that's just one example of something that can already.
So you're flagging that there is enough information for people to be indicted on Estina, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right, guys, we can obviously talk about state capture for days, but let's go to the Sunday Times, which is, of course, the global panic that we see happening, the coronavirus. South Africa, it says, is scrambling. We know, of course, that there is a plane on its way from China to South Africa with South Africans that are being you know, being evacuated and brought home. What do you make of the Sunday Times story, Chris?
Well, I think, actually, to be honest with you, I think all the media in this country has been a bit slow on it, really. I mean, it's been going for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's been treated as something that's happening over there, not forgetting the fact that this country imports a lot of stuff from China. More than 85% of its honey, believe it or not, on the shelves we see.
But we just had the Transnet CEO saying that she's done her due diligence, you know, on, let's say, goods coming from China, for example. You know the continent very well. We've seen cases in Nigeria. And how do you think the African continent and South Africa is going to be responding to this outbreak?
Well, I mean, the other day I was just telling my colleague here that when I came back on the plane from Dubai the other week, I mean, there was a whole troop of soldiers came on the plane. Everyone was tested twice for the thing. At least this country is trying to make sure that nobody comes in unwittingly with this disease. Whether or not we have the infrastructure, I don't know, to actually look after a massive outbreak here, but I don't know. But sometimes we've got to put it in context of it. Hundreds of thousands of people die every year from flu, ordinary common flu, and we don't really make a big song and dance about it. So I don't know. I think it's a story that's going to develop.
Now, according to the Sunday Times, it says an elaborate high-level evacuation will involve specialized biohazard military health and Air Force personnel. And as I said earlier, a chartered plane, preferably from SAA, is due to leave, you know, tomorrow being Monday. Do you think, given our infrastructure, health infrastructure, that we have what it takes to be ready to deal with people coming back, being tested, being quarantined, and containing what could be a potential risk for us?
I actually think we do, and considering the fact that it's just like over 130 people, so I think because it's just that mission, we can contain those people. But I think the other important thing is that we need to be careful about not creating fear. And then, so our media, TV, radio, newspapers, everywhere, we need to keep bringing facts and stating that it's just 130 Yes.
You know, this is actually so important. I was posting a Facebook status saying that the virus that is spreading the fastest and for which there is no cure is, in fact, fear. And the only way to arm yourself is, of course, with knowledge and information. Are we doing enough as a media, Chris, to put facts out there, considering the fact that you have very little control over what people send on WhatsApp and so on? I mean, I've already seen communities being victimized as a consequence of this. How do we deal with the facts and the fear of this disease?
Well, that's it. That's something. I think now's the time when the formal press needs to stand up and actually do that. Put back. Same as you. Yesterday I met a lady born in Hong Kong, grew up in Bloemfontein, and she said people are already looking at her funny at something. And sad to say, she was going to get this leadership program for young women. They were going to walk the entire length of the Great Wall of China. They've had to postpone it because of this fear over this. I think it's time for facts on the table, time for analysis. I think it's time for investigation and for the media to stand up. I mean, the other day we interviewed somebody from Wuhan live. He gave us a better perspective than we were getting through the papers. It's the time to take the risk and time to work hard.
Okay, let's go to the Sunday world. Now, we've got a very famous musician being accused of rape and, of course, another entertainer. Now, given the focus on gender-based violence and the fact that we saw the funeral yesterday of the little girl from Connaught Estate in the Western Cape, Tanze van Wyk, where do we even begin when this kind of thing is endemic in South Africa?
I think men need to stand up and say, I think when people said men are trash, they need to accept that it's not just saying you innocent, you guilty. We need to understand that the whole system, like being a man, is
masculinity
a problem.
itself.
Masculinity itself, yes, is a problem. And then we need to acknowledge, and then we also need to, as men, take part. When you hear someone screaming next door, don't be quiet. You don't have to physically go there. Maybe you can call the police and say, I'm just hearing. I think the police need to be here. So men need to start taking action in really breaking apart and addressing the issue of gender-based violence.
Now, if we are to address gender-based violence, as the Sunday World has put the story on, and kudos to them for putting this on the front page, you have so many to pick from. This is a real problem in our country. When you look at the budget, Chris, the allocations there for gender-based violence, does it actually signal that the state is serious?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of people in power here, but also people in the media, need to step up. If you look inside the Sunday World, there's a leader there, and it says that the headline is, no, it's on the leader page. The headline says, women are also able to do leadership positions. Just have a look at the headline there. And I was just reading it and looking at you speaking to Portia Derby. Look, women are also capable to lead. I mean, you're doing Portia Derby at the same time, running Transnet, and you start thinking, well, hello, we've still got... I mean, there are women in leadership positions all over the place in this country.
So if one talks about a headline like that, I mean, why are we still saying women are also capable to lead? When women are leading our households, when women are farmers, when they are leading big, state institutions in our country, what is the role of the media here in trying to break down patriarchy?
I think that's it. The message needs to keep coming. It can't stop now because statistically things are still not equal.
But it starts in our own house, doesn't it?
Yes, and it starts with our own. For example, if you're a parent, it starts with that. You need to raise not a girl and a boy child, but you just need to raise children.
Let's come back to the Sunday Times because this is going to be dominating. I mean, the economic effects have been looked at and so on, but I've listened to quite a number of analysts, particularly people from the US. There's a disjuncture, it seems, Chris, between the Trump administration's response and the Center for Disease Control. And, of course, the market is panicking because it doesn't know. What is the responsibility of media in reporting this virus? How do we not buy into that cycle of fear? How do we not use it to get more viewers simply because we want our numbers to go up? How do we actually arm people with information?
Well, I think we need to be responsible. I think we need to have integrity. I mean, you look at the markets this week, it was a bloodbath. You know, most of it was based on sentiment, people selling. It was like the worst for a decade almost. And the point is that's the kind of damage that can be done to world economies. And I think it's time for the media to sit back and say, yes, we need information, but no, we're not going to sensationalize this thing. Otherwise, we're going to end up with people. I mean, people were saying to me the other day, people aren't going out even in this town. in Johannesburg because they're afraid of catching something. I mean, it's that kind of paranoia that we need to step away from.
Absolutely. Let's finish off on the Mail and Guardian. And of course, their journalists have been on the story for a long time. They broke the fact that South Africans will be evacuated from China. There's been a lot of anxiety from South Africans. Some people were saying, you know, did government take its responsibility seriously when it took its time to bring people home? Your comments about, you know, the time it took for the South African government to make these arrangements, were they trying to get their ducks in a row so that when these people come home, they are actually able to receive them safely and to not create panic and to not put the rest of the population at risk? I
think that's exactly what they were trying to do, because acting quickly without planning could have led to problems. Now that they've planned, they had a plan in place, now that they're getting people back into the country and everything will be done accordingly. And I'm certain that nothing is going to happen that should make people be scared or be paranoid about what's going to happen.
I think the most important thing is we must report the facts, we must contain the panic, and we mustn't buy into the fear. Gentlemen, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you again next Sunday. Thank you for watching.